Everybody's gone.
Gentlemen, how are we doing? Are we well?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. You guys all good?
All good. I think you just broke up at the absolute crucial moment, and as well, sir, you were in a cracking, striking pose there.
Let's see how it goes then. If not, I'm leaving all the talking to you two. We'll start then at the top, I guess. See, we've got Dave from the very start and FC Halifax Town. And if I'm right in thinking, Dave, the last time we did the non-league show was start of the month, and you just come off the back of that win at Rochdale, and it doesn't seem to have gone that well since.
No, in a word, no. It's not gone particularly well. Obviously, we've lost to Dorking at home. We've had what on paper looks a respectable narrow defeat at league leaders Chesterfield and a couple of 0-0s. It could have been so much more at Dagenham, and by all accounts, Tuesday night was 2 shots on target. We're at a real crossroads in the season at the minute. Obviously, we're not scoring, but we're not conceding. We've got the joint best defensive record. We have only conceded 10 goals. So it depends if you're a glass half empty or a glass half full type of person. I think we're one striker away from, challenging the top 7. Whether we'll do that throughout the season or we'll certainly be in that top half. If we don't, we're gonna slide fairly rapidly. I mean, it was only in that period you've spoken about, we must have had a 6 or 7 point cushion on Oldham, for instance, but since that time they've won 3 games out of 3 since David Unsworth were relieved of duties, and they're now a point in front of Halifax. If that's it, that again on paper, that's a clear indicator of how we've stagnated and another club's come up. Dorking are above us as well. I mean, obviously the win over us will have helped, but we're one striker away or one person away from somebody who can put it in back of the net from being a fairly solid team. And at the moment, Rob Harker's out with an injury. I think he's going to be out for another further 6 to 8 games. Aaron Cosgrave, the 2 players that would be labelled as strikers, centre forwards, are both unavailable at the moment. They tried Jamie Cook in there Tuesday night. We missed a penalty at Dagenham. If there's ever an opportunity in a game where they almost hand you a goal on a plate, it's penalties. And defender Jamie Stott missed down at Dagenham, missed a reliable in the penalty shootouts last season, though.
Yeah, so when you look down, your luck is out, eh?
That's true. That is true. But it's
the beauty of the current situation, of course, being in the National League is there's no window. Are we expecting anything in the market to be able to go and find that striker, even if it's just a month on loan to cover the situation you've got at the moment?
Well, David Bosworth, who's chairman of FC Halifax Town in Tuesday night's programme, said something along the lines of possibly by the time you read this, we'll have signed a young championship striker on loan. That hasn't quite materialised yet. There's just rumours, pure internet rumours, that it's somebody from Huddersfield. I don't know. I don't know who it is. So, but at the moment, there's a lot of alarm bells almost for some supporters. Chris Millington did an interview with Tom Scargill of the Halifax Courier yesterday, bemoaning the fact that now, as a club, we can't compete with the likes of Altrincham and Gateshead, who have signed Marcus Diananga.
Yeah, Marcus Diananga, yeah.
Another player, respectively, who we were in for. And it's the fact we couldn't compete with those 2 clubs that's rattled a lot of Halifax Town supporters' cages. I want to say my own included, and it is, but that's just where we are as a club. I put it on our unofficial fan forum as something along the lines of a very, very honest and frank Chris Millington, Halifax Courier, and then just let other people dissect it. But yeah, people are worried by the fact we haven't got a lot of firepower at the minute. Jack Hunter come out and said we need to do more as a team to remedy this. I mean, Adam Senior as a defender, he's got 2 goals and he's our second top goal scorer. Harker's got 3 this year. Evans and Ali have got 1. I think they're the only players that have scored this year.
It's not hard to see where the issues lie then.
No, we just need a bit more firepower. On Tuesday, there were plenty of balls into the box, but there was nobody there to finish them off. So they were just going in one side and almost coming out the other. So it's disappointing. And I mean, if it weren't for a fantastic save off Sam Johnson, we'd have lost on Tuesday.
it's almost outside looking in as well, Dave. I think apart from Chesterfield, you've not lost against Solihull, Barnet, Gateshead, and you beat Bromley.
Yeah.
So that doesn't look too bad, does it? But especially it gets exaggerated a little bit more in terms of just not picking up them vital wins rather than draws when, unfortunately, you're not won in the last 5. And I think that's where kind of the fan side of it steps in, doesn't it? You know, the top 4, top 5 you've done reasonably well at. But then if you get the odd win here and there in the past 5 games, it kind of makes up for it a little bit.
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, the glass half empty side of this club would say we've only got 1 win in our last 9, which was the Rochdale win, which we discussed when I was last on. And we've had we have on the flip, as you say, we've had probably the hardest start a club could have so far. Obviously, but on the flip again, it's which way you want to look at it. We've got all of our so-called hard away games out of the way. Solihull, we arguably should have won there. I mean, Chesterfield from 2-0 down after whatever it were, 12 minutes, and we've pulled it back to 2 apiece. You would take a draw, but it was disappointing that they went down to 10 men and had their manager sent to the stands, and we still seemed happy just to sit on a 2-2 and ultimately got punished for that in the last minute. I mean, Chesterfield have done it to, I think they've won 10 out of their opening 12 games, if I'm right. And I think in at least 7 or 8 of those, they're 90 plus to win games. And it's just one of those things, yeah. We'd have probably not been disgraced, or I'm sure supporters not would have taken a defeat, but they can understand losing narrowly at league leaders. But the fashion in which, or the manner in which it was done was disappointing overall. But yeah, as you say, a respectable point at Solihull. They're still unbeaten. We've even played Southend. I mean, for their 10-point deduction, that's another club that would be up there in that top 7. Obviously, the stories that are going on at that club are well known. And it took. I mean, we didn't discuss on this show, or I certainly weren't involved when we were on about Luke Summerfield sending off at the Southend game. But that was the catalyst to us getting a draw. Yeah,
well, I think for those who haven't seen it, I'd recommend to go and see it because obviously it did get overturned.
I can't imagine it's that hard to find. I mean, I was in the south stand at the opposite end of the field when it happened. I had seen Summerfield sat on the floor, but I don't know, when you watch a game of football, it's like you can process it in your head. Like, I just thought a corner's come in, it's gone out the other side. Nothing clear and obvious has happened in the box. Somebody hasn't been pulled down, or there's an appeal for a penalty. I see Summerfield sat on the ground, and as he gets up, the referees give him a red card. It was the most surreal silence I've ever heard. Like, the ground, there was just like, it just went like completely silent, like they were just stunned. Obviously, I've now seen it back post-match. I mean, it's been rescinded, etc. But yeah, puzzling, really puzzling.
It's a good job you can overturn, decisions like that, because a player of Summerfield's experience as well is vital. I mean, before obviously Chris will probably go on to the next couple of games, but kind of for those maybe watching and listening for the first time, what would you say is almost the expectations of a Sherman and the fans at the moment? Because, like we've just argued, of 1 win in 9, but you're unbeaten apart from 1 against the top 5. What are the expectations of Town at the moment? Like I say, maybe one striker, maybe 2 away from the playoffs, but you kind of just you're sitting okay at the moment, aren't you, mid-table?
Yeah. But we're sitting comfortably in mid-table from being 5th, 6th. We're now down at like 10th. It's difficult. It's difficult to try and gauge an overall perspective of supporters, because you only get a handful of people that post online, and it's either overly positive or it's overly negative.
It's always one or the other, isn't it?
Balanced. But it's pretty much, in a nutshell, if we can just sign a couple more players that know where the back of the net is, we'll be absolutely fine. But on the flip, it's like all or nothing. It's like, if we don't, we're gonna slide towards the bottom 4 pretty quickly. And obviously, football's quite a cutthroat business, Hindsight's always 20/20, but the amount of managers or players that just say, I don't know, if I just had a couple more games with this club, we wouldn't have been relegated, or if I maybe just not got injured, then I might have scored the goals, for instance, that have kept this club up. So now, while we're in a period where it's like Harker and Cosgrave are injured, it's like, why are we not getting a player in on loan that's a striker? I mean, Millington, in the same article that I referenced earlier about we can't compete with the likes of Altrincham and Gateshead, he's saying agents are almost like burning his phone up offering players, but that's agents offering players, whether they're good enough or of a quality or what we need. Again, is another conversation entirely.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. Although you'd think even at this stage you can find somebody that can come in on the cheap to be a third choice striker when Harker and Cosgrave come back. Even that's better right now than having to play somebody out of position through the middle. Going on to the weekend then, and look, we've talked about how you've had some of the harder looking fixtures, especially away from home. Coming up though, Eastleigh at home on Saturday, followed by 2 tricky looking away trips to Woking on Tuesday night, followed by Ebbsfleet.
Yeah, again, we really need to get 3 points on Saturday, but it's difficult to put that kind of expectation on the team when they're not scoring. Woking, as you say, Woking and Ebbsfleet are 2 really, really tough games. Really tough. I mean, Ebbsfleet haven't had the greatest of starts this season, but Woking, the past couple of seasons, have certainly been building something, especially since they drew Watford at home in the FA Cup the other year. They've been a club on the up. I think did they make last season's playoffs? The problem is because we weren't really involved. I lost track of 6th and 7th. I mean, as you say, Woking managed just to get in there. I know we beat them in our final away game, and it made a lot of Chesterfield fans happy because it meant that they could finish 3rd, and they didn't have the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place like playoff eliminator.
Yeah, the eliminator.
They'd have just been through that round.
If I can give you any consolation for the Eastleigh game on Saturday, it's that when they came to Scotland last month, they were dire. However, they did sack the manager just after it.
Yeah, it doesn't really count for much because Dagenham weren't doing that well really, and they were 1 world-class save away from taking 3 points. On Saturday, by all accounts, Dorking didn't play that well and they managed to win, but their league position currently would counteract that point. They're obviously playing some good football at the minute to leapfrog over.
Isn't this just I appreciate from your perspective less so maybe right now, but isn't this just the beauty of the National League? It really is one of those leagues. Like people always say it, for example, about the Championship, not that Dave cares about that anyone can beat anyone on their day. But the National League for me is just the same. It really is a case of anyone can beat anyone. Unless maybe Chesterfield.
Yeah, within reason. The fact that the playoffs have been extended from just, 2nd to 5th, from second out to 7th, you tend to get a couple of surprise packages in 6th and 7th. Clubs like I said, Woking, Bromley, ourselves even, that have had that 6th and 7th place. I know it's another game to get to Wembley, but I'm sure Boreham Wood or somebody finished 6th and managed to get to Wembley and didn't go up. It's a really funny league because you've got like your Oldhams and your Chesterfields that are like they get the crowds, they can obviously get the players. You've got Rochdale and teams that can pull like 3,500, and then you've got teams like Boreham Wood that would struggle to get 500 people watching them. Yet they're still right up there because they do well in the FA Cup. They've had a couple of good FA Cup runs back to back, and that's managed to propel them. I think they were doing quite well before then, but that's helped propel them up. Bromley built on their FA Trophy win. They average over 2,000 now, whereas it seems like we just sort of stand still. Like we get 1,500. We got 1,500 when we reformed. We lost 3-0 to Boreham Wood in August 2008 in front of like 1,500, and we played in front of 1,500 15 years later and 3 leagues above where we are. Like we've just completely stood still in terms of stuff like that. But again, now Altrincham and Gateshead have potentially overtaken us. I mean, I look at a football league that has Fleetwood, Crawley, Forest Green, Burton, even Cheltenham, and I think like these are all clubs that we traditionally are better than, but we're not because we're below them.
Yeah, it's absolutely mad.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual game against Eastleigh for Saturday, what are you expecting besides no goals?
Hopefully that we can keep another clean sheet, I suppose, or what the clubs like to do in the past, and I'm not sure if other clubs do this, we'll literally announce a signing, like on a Saturday, for instance, we'll announce a signing at 2:05 after the team sheets come out, and it's like, who's that? And it's like, oh, we've signed a new player. So I'm hoping we might assign somebody by the weekend, even if it's just on loan. and we can put the ball in the back of the net. But it's no good if we score 1 and I don't know Eastleigh gets 6 because we need to score.
The one positive thing you have had though is that defensiveness, that defensive side. I mean, to be fair, going back a month or so to that game at Rochdale, as soon as you went ahead in that game, there was no way that Rochdale were going to break through because, to the credit, Millington got the tactics spot on defensively, couldn't break through. So there's certainly something there at the back at least to build on. Hence, I guess the 0-0s in the last couple of games. But as I say, Eastleigh, I would, as a neutral in this, I would certainly veer towards the Halifax win than an Eastleigh win without a doubt.
We also have a terrible record against Eastleigh. It took us like 12 attempts.
I take that back.
Yeah, so we've got a horrendous record against Eastleigh. But at the same time, again, it swings and roundabouts. Gateshead haven't beat us for nearly 25 years. I think Dagenham haven't won at the Shea for a similar amount, 20 plus years. So, again, it swings and roundabouts. But what a lot of people have said is we play like an away team all the time. So when we play away from home, we tend to put in better performances, whereas people argue that we take the same tactics and mindset into home games. So we're really easy to defend against because we don't seem to have that home team advantage or impetus to attack an away team. We just act like an away team, home or away. And that's why it seems to work away from home. I mean, drawing 0-0 at Barnet, they had won their 5 home games in a row before that. They'd opened the season with a 100% record, and we drew with them and were 1 penalty away from beating them, to losing at home to Dorking or, whatever, turning in a couple of disappointing results. But yeah, we just need to put the ball in the back of the net. It's what Bradford needed to do when I dropped the S-bomb on this very podcast describing Bradford City. I think since Cook's actually scored a hat-trick. Cook needed to start scoring, and he did, or he has.
Yeah,
true,
absolutely. Let's turn our attentions then down alley to Farsley Celtic. Lewis, you've been keeping kind of half an eye on that for us here on the show, because we need to actually reach out to Farsley, to be fair, and to the Farsley fans, and try and get somebody to come on that's a Farsley supporter. But for them, similarly to Halifax, since we were last on, the results have been very inconsistent, kind of middling away nicely still in mid-table of the National League North, though.
Yeah, picked up a really important win at Gloucester. Obviously, they've had a few difficulties on the pitch. Tim Flowers as manager, he's left as well. Got Mick Cook in, who was with him previously from Swindon Town Ladies. He's replaced him. But I think for Farsley to go to Gloucester in this situation Gloucester were in and pick up a really classic 1-0 smash and grab away win is perfect. And you feel that was a really good sign for the Celts. I mean, obviously they get the FA Cup draw against Scarborough, really not an easy tie for them at all. For a team like Farsley, and any team at this level, you want almost a favourable tie. Scarborough isn't that. But to their credit, they got a decent draw at the Citadel, but then, were quite comfortably beaten at Flamingo Land Stadium 3-0, and I think that would have probably hurt Farsley a bit. After not a bad start, let's be honest, on paper, and then suffered quite a disappointing loss there. And then, repeat that against Banbury at home. And Banbury, for me, probably not the same team as what they were last year. Gone through a lot of change again, overhaul of squad, overhaul of manager and coaching staff as well. And it's probably one that Farsley would have looked at and pinpointed at least a point, hopefully 3, to keep that run going. But they've just seemed to have slipped away a bit, and that division is really tight. There's nobody really running away with it. And it kind of, again, repeats a little bit of what I was saying in a few podcasts previously. I don't think it's a strong league compared to previous years. That's not taking anything away from those at the top at the moment, like Tamworth are flying, but Tamworth have been promoted. Many people wouldn't have had them at the top of the table, but they are. You'd have expected like Chester to be up there, and Spennymoor have been pushing, but Spennymoor have lost a manager. Chandler as well has resigned, which is a real big shock in that division. So Farsley just need to, we say it a lot, it's really not a lot of rocket science with Farsley. They just need to keep plugging away, getting the points, and they'll be absolutely fine in this division. But it was going to come to a point where they're going to have a little bit of a situation, maybe sort of a moment where they're looking around going, right, actually, this is time for us to kind of regroup a little bit. We've had a decent, probably first, 6-7 games that show what we're about in this division. And if we are to do anything in terms of pushing at the right end of that table, rather than looking over the shoulder, we just need to get on winning track a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the National League North, as you say, it's tight at the top and it's tight towards the bottom as well. And for Farsley being nicely in the middle of that, they'll probably take that at this stage. Top of the league, as you mentioned, is Tamworth, but same points are South Shields and Spennymoor, who all played a game more. And we can't really not talk about the National League North without mentioning Scunthorpe United, who are currently 4th, in a really good position in the league. But, I mean, as clubs being run goes, this is up there with the absolute worst. And to be honest, it really does kind of put into perspective. It doesn't matter who you support, whether you're a fan of a non-league club or Manchester United and wanting the Glazers out. When you look at a club like Scunthorpe and the news that's come out today with the ownership there, kind of makes you feel grateful for your own ownerships and structures sometimes, because it is an absolute, let's be honest, shit show.
It's hard because I don't know the ins and outs. I see the comments on the forums, and it's I mean, if you're a fan, you see that news today, and it was close to breaking your heart in it when it's your club and it's in that situation. I think. Yeah, from that perspective, in terms of when you focus on your own clubs, it does make you grateful to an extent.
There's always going to be problems in-house with your own clubs, isn't there? But with the news today, just in case anyone hasn't seen it, so basically the chairman that came in at the turn of the year, if I'm right in thinking, or just after the turn of the year, has basically said that he's not putting any more money into the club whatsoever. The club are vacating their home ground, Glanford Park, which has been their home since the early 90s when it was built, I think, from their previous ground. Because the previous chairman, Peter Swan, his company, still owns the stadium, despite the club itself having a new owner. So they've forced basically an eviction notice basically on the ground. Scunthorpe have decided that financially it is best for them to do that and to try and have one less headache, I guess, and they're still going to have a million battles to fight. So they've announced that they were going to ground share at Northern Premier League side Gainsborough Trinity, not too far away, makes some sense. Only for a couple of hours after Scunthorpe's statement, the Gainsborough to put a statement out themselves saying that nothing's been finalised on the ground share and none of the safety certificates and that sort of thing have actually been signed off. Now, interesting, I did see that Neil Bishop, former EFL player, but he was the Gainsborough manager at the start of the season, put out on Twitter, I think he's also strongly affiliated, to be fair, over his playing days with Scunner, that in his understanding at the start of the season, there was already an agreement in place that if for any reason Scunthorpe had to vacate Glanford Park, that Gainsborough were accepting of the ground share. So there's certainly a lot of different things from a lot of different crap show for the Scunthorpe fans.
Like you say, I mean, we're going to find out exactly what goes on, don't we, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Everybody knows Scunthorpe United. Let's be honest, Scunthorpe. I remember Scunthorpe being in the Championship.
Go back to what, 2011?
Yeah, and I think this is where it's hard, isn't it? As a fan, you put yourself in the shoes of a supporter. You, no doubt about, you want your club to survive. It's now what's next? What's next for my club? Obviously we're talking about potential ground share, but with that, does that potentially reduce attendances? Don't know. Does that affect the playing squad in terms of players either staying, leaving, or don't know? There's just a lot of unknowns, I think, at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that news, let's be honest, because Scunthorpe are a name, that isn't just restricted to kind of regional headlines, that's hit national sport headlines, in terms of that. And I think, it probably puts Scunthorpe back in the news, whether they want that or not. I think they just want to get the club and kind of get back up divisions, don't they? And they started the season really well. I remember,
weirdly, that's the one stable bit, isn't it? On the pitch, as I say, currently 4th in the league, a game in hand, and they could go top if they win that.
Yeah, and I think, I've spoken to a few people who've gone there as a fan, and they've loved it. Obviously the atmosphere is amazing. the Scunthorpe fans have definitely turned out to support the club despite being in National League North, which is obviously they don't feel they potentially believe where they sit. But, they've, like you said, in terms of on-the-pitch displays and results, they haven't been too bad at all. But, yeah, I think... Yeah, again, it's hard because I'm sitting on the fence. I generally don't know what's going to happen in terms of on the pitch, off the field. But it's one that I think, is going to be one covered, probably indirectly by us as we are doing now. But it's going to be picked up across football because, we have seen occasions in the past.
Look, nobody wants another Bury situation. Nobody wants another Macclesfield situation, really. Although Macclesfield obviously worked out slightly different in the end to Bury, but sitting on the fence, to be fair, Lewis, is probably the safest place, given that this owner, as the current owner, has issued stadium bans to fans for speaking out against him on Facebook supporter groups, on social media in the last few days. Literally, it's absolutely bizarre. It really is. I mean, Dave, I know your bubble is very much FC Halifax Town, but obviously Scunthorpe is a side that will have done battle with Halifax for many times over the years. It's just one of those things that's not good to see at all.
No, it's not. But on the flip to everything that's happening, Scunthorpe can field what would be a competitive National League side. There's from somewhere at some place. They've got, is it Ross Fitzsimmons in goal? I mean, they signed him from Chesterfield. Some of the players that are out on the pitch for Scunthorpe aren't National League North players. So again, it's that like, what is actually going on? Like they're getting evicted from the ground, and I know it's to do with a former owner, but they're still fielding a side that's essentially roided up.
But this is the really bizarre thing, because this is
strange case.
The recruitment in the summer was, to be fair, on the face of it, really good, and obviously financed by this new owner. And everyone at the time was like, excellent, they've got a really good chance of going back up. But something has obviously soured dramatically over the space of the season so far, to go from an owner that was investing his money to literally that statement today saying the owner is not prepared to invest any more money whatsoever.
It could be some kind of demand from this former owner. Maybe they, I don't know, they paid him a reasonable fee to play at Glanford Park. And I'd imagine if this had happened and the amount of essentially dirty laundry that's getting aired in public from wherever, people getting banned, as you've said, Games with Trinity have said, we don't know. But, well, it's first we've known of this agreement, safety certificates. There's just shots getting fired from everywhere. I'd imagine if anything financially, like the former owners put the rent up on the ground massively out of spite, I'm sure that would have come out publicly. I don't really know what to say about the situation.
It's certainly worth typing Scunthorpe United into Twitter and just take in all that you can, because this is something that could rumble on.
The account got deleted, didn't it, as well, at one point, I think, for like half an hour. At SVU FC official or whatever their handle is, didn't exist for half an hour. It got put back up, or what is going on? I mean, who even? I mean, it should be like your media teams that would have access to that. So obviously, I mean, they could be put under pressure from higher up, and I just don't know. I don't know.
It's one of those. Ever since I did my degree donkeys years ago, being working in football is something I've always wanted to do. But you could not pay me enough money right now to be the Scunthorpe United media manager, because that is a position that is going to be so much under fire again from all angles right now. To be honest, I absolutely feel for him. I really do.
I mean, Gainsborough, if we're concentrating, Gainsborough do have a point. I mean, do they play at North home? Do they? I don't know what that capacity is. I mean, Scunthorpe have demonstrated that they can easily pull in 4,500 plus just for a regular match day. That's without gunning for promotion or, being in a relegation battle where it's an important game and you're going to get an inflated crowd. I mean, I've been to North home a couple of times and I couldn't imagine there being 4,000 plus people at that ground.
Well,
and
I mean,
you've got to put safety and all that into play.
Yeah, that's what I mean in terms of all that.
Yeah,
utilities and toilets and food and everything throws into that.
The official capacity is 4,300 of North Home. I should have known that without having to double check it, given that my first ever sports days as a kid, weirdly, took place on the North Home pitch like 30 odd years ago, nearly. It's just one of those bizarre things. It's going to be really interesting to see how things progresses. As I say, it's just one of those absolute hearts go out, though, to Scunthorpe United fans at the moment. But look, let's be honest, Dave, as a club, a Halifax Town fan that has had to go through the mill of reforming, clubs like Halifax Town go to show that there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel if the worst does happen.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky in that when we had to reform, we reformed at the 8th level of the pyramid, whereas now if you reform, as like Bury have found out,
yeah,
and as Macclesfield have found out, you'd be playing like, I don't know, Golker and Shelley rather than maybe Ossett Albion. I know they don't exist anymore. You know, it's levels. I know there's not much in it, but if you reform, Hereford had to go through it.
Yeah.
Scunthorpe will be fine, as will Southend. If both of those teams have to reform, their major issue is away games when they can easily take thousands to places that just wouldn't even be able to hold that as a capacity. That's the only thing you'd come up against. I mean, Halifax didn't really do that anywhere. The only game where the attendances got capped, funnily enough, were in the north when we had Guiseley in a playoff final, and I think we got capped at 1,000, but they'd be fine. I mean, Scunthorpe would be fine. I just don't know. Maybe they've invested everything they can in the team, and their final straw, like their last resort, is if we can get back to the National League, maybe we can fight on, and maybe it's all or nothing. If they don't go up, maybe it'd be a case of like at the end of the season, just be like, we're gonna have to reform. I mean, they're going to have to reform and not play at Glanford Park as well, by all accounts, if that's what's the major millstone.
It would appear that anyway, that the ownership is certainly wanting out as well as ceasing further investment. They are actively trying to seek a way out of the club. Apparently, again, in this statement that was released earlier, there's parties have made themselves interested, but by the looks of it, are kind of taking a look at the situation, being like, don't have the money for that. There's winding up orders and all sorts as well. So yeah, it's certainly something that's going to rumble on for a little while yet. But yeah, as I say, hearts go out to Scunthorpe United fans. Obviously, we've digressed quite significantly there, but certainly feel like it's a story worth talking about at the moment in non-league football, especially. Let's turn to the Northern Premier League. And Lewis, your time to shine, mate. Bradford Park Avenue. Now, I'll be honest, I've been looking forward slightly to this, just because I feel like you've got a lot to get off your chest. And look, you probably haven't had this counselling session for a while, so let's do it on a public forum. It's not been great for Avenue of late, and this is the part where you say, no, it's fine, crack on, let's move on.
Yeah, in Dave's words, don't care, move on. Wow, yeah, I mean, where do we go? Plain and simple, it's just not good enough. Just not good enough. We went down on a last day last season because we put a really good run together at the end of the season. I think it was 7 games where we went unbeaten. And we were done by Fylde, who eventually became champions. What cost us in that season was the beginning of that campaign where we didn't win in 10. That was pretty much what stopped us from staying in that division. And like I've repeated earlier, I don't think it's a really strong division compared to years gone by. So that kind of proved that we weren't good enough. Going into this campaign, we had a bit of slight optimism that we might just be one of the better footballing teams in this league. But from day one, those that go home and away, I'll include myself in that, we were crying out for a bit of leadership, a bit of experience, because we have a lot of kids being, 20, 21, 22, little experience. Sometimes if, that you're going up against a bit of a battle, it's looking alongside you and looking for somebody to either encourage you, fire you up, put an arm around you, tell you off, something to get you going, because they've been there and done it. Since the last time we spoke, we've just not been good enough, and I think that's, quite honest. We went to FC United, very good team on the ball, football inside who like to spray the ball about on a pitch that, allows you to do that. But they were better than us in football. They beat us 2-0, and that was a fair result. But at the beginning of the season, we felt we would be up there as one of the best footballing teams. FC United showed us how to do that on that day. Then we go and play Blythe in the FA Cup. That was our opportunity to get through in the division, because in the competition, because we had the chances. We kind of nullified Blythe's threat as much as we could. albeit like Cedric Main and JJ, who should have scored probably 1 or 2 chances, but skied them over the bar. But we had a glorious chance in the final minute to win it, and blew it. And then we go to play them at home, and we're in a situation where we've got a squad that isn't, the strongest squad we can play because of injuries and suspensions. But yet we've said at the beginning of the season that, our strongest 11 can match everyone, but we've got players who in the past few years haven't been consistently playing across the course of a season. I'll call names out. Lucas Dunstan, for me, is probably the best right back in the division, but he doesn't play every game because sometimes he picks up the odd knock. And that's no criticism, but this is just, we see him from history. Mitch Lund, again, probably our strongest centre-back, but, can play about half a season, maybe 3/4 of a season. Jamie Spencer's had his injury problems, again, and even more so now he's in his ACL, which is just, it pretty much kills you in the centre midfield. But when you've had Jamie, sometimes doesn't play all season. We've got to throw this in this situation. Ollie Johnson doesn't play every game. Mark Ross is an emergency, but will play when it's needed. For me, great bloke, love Rossi to pieces. But if you're going to get players, and we need to be with the squad from day one, and be with that squad and be there week in, week out, rather than just for cover. We're not good enough to just carry people who can play when they're needed. The list goes on in terms of players that we're not consistently playing every week. So with that in mind, we've gone against Blythe and we've put an unbelievable effort in. Unbelievable. And I called it out on social media. The referee is given just 2 bizarre decisions. How Luke Havern has not been fouled in the penalty is beyond me. The lad's got the wrong side of a Havern. Luca can't get in on the end of a ball. You can see blatantly from where I am, his shirt's been pulled out. But it's a goal kick. How it's a goal kick, it's either a penalty or a dive and a yellow card. But neither's given, it's a goal kick. And then Brad Doherty makes a really good turn with the ball. The lad takes away his heel. You can hear contact. The referee plays on to score the second goal. Once they've scored a second goal, the game's done. Which is a massive blow because, we put a real good effort in, but they were the better side and probably arguably deserved to win. Saturday, follow that, we go and play against Workington at home, and that feels pretty much as low as you could do from the previous season when we lost to Washington.
Yeah.
Again, low on numbers, injuries as well, really hurting us. But against a team who were dogged, stubborn, without being disrespectful to Workington, a decent NPL team, but mid-table-ish. They're not going to be challenging like to Radcliffe and Macclesfield for the title. And we lose 2-1. And to be honest, that was quite flattering. I thought we were well off it. And then we go follow up at Ashton on Tuesday night. Again, there's still disgruntlement after what's happened in the previous weekend. We go to Ashton. We concede a real sloppy goal, real poor goal to concede. Suffer another injury on top of what we've already got. Look serious to O'Malley. Look, he carrying his arm in his shirt, almost like a bandage, kind of strap. We equalise, but then even when we equalise, we sensed and we could tell from the terraces that we just looked edgy. We looked nervy, and then concede a real poor goal again. Second, not clearing the ball well enough. As crazy it sounds, doing the dark arts, not taking your man out well enough, leaving a man back post to finish just before half time, almost 30 seconds before the whistle's gone. And second half, we were, it's kind of the old, childhood fairy tale, kind of, the wolf in the house. We were kept on blowing, but it just wasn't going to go in. And the quality wasn't there. But that's, for me, that was a big striking thing where we're just not good enough to get that final bit right. We could get past the men, but we couldn't deliver across. We had shot away, but the shot wasn't on target. And it just wouldn't happen for us. And for me, we've had 5 years of decline and we seem to be just carrying on what we're doing. And it's really, really frustrating, I think, from a fan's perspective at the moment, because from beginning of the season, having the odd little bit of optimism that we might just push for the playoffs, we're now in a situation where we're in the bottom 5, bottom 6. And already this Saturday against Stafford Rangers, let's be absolutely honest, he's already a 6-pointer.
Yeah, and it's very, very early in the season for that. Now, before we kind of touch on everything else with the club at the moment, I just wanted to pick up on the fact that you say Mason O'Malley is injured. Has there been any update on that? And am I right in thinking, I'm fairly sure I am here, that Mason O'Malley is a left back, and that the day after Tuesday, Will Callaghan, who is a left back, left the club?
Yeah. So added on top of this a couple of weeks, Jack Whiting suffered an injury at Blythe. Jack came from Doncaster, just to kind of give a little bit of context, where he's a decent little lad, decent player, 18 years old, could make the step up again with a bit of consistent games under his belt, and hopefully in a team that's doing a bit better than what it's doing at the moment, because he will get noticed then. O'Malley have been kind of either shifting between left centre back and left back, whether it's been a back three with two wing backs or a back four. And then O'Malley picks up, like I say, that injury on Tuesday night, and then Callaghan goes. Now, Will Callaghan got brought in pre-season as a trialist, did really well.
He looked good in pre-season. I remember seeing him early goals and thinking, he looks
very
useful.
keen at going forward. Always looking to go forward with the ball, which was a big positive. And I think, the odd question mark here and there about potentially O'Malley, despite his experience at a young age at Scunthorpe, was he could get caught at the back with balls in and around him and over the top. Scunthorpe's fans called that out as well in social media. I asked a question, that's what they said. Great player, will give absolutely everything, but can be prone to just being caught. And as unfortunately proved to be the case. Callaghan hasn't played a lot of minutes for us. Played 45 on the first game against Macclesfield. I think played a bit against Morpeth, and then did reasonably well against Concert away. But he would probably push a bit more further as almost like a left wing, left-sided midfielder position as well. He was arguably playing left back, but kind of did push up a lot more in that game of the way the system worked. But yeah, and he's gone to Brighouse, one of our local teams as well. So we're going into a situation potentially on Saturday, and I've heard Jack Whiting might be fit, but again, it's match fitness, that we might not have a left back. And on Tuesday night, we had Harrison Hopper at right back, we had Lucas Dunson at left back. And so, I think it's just, again, we've said it time and time again, and it's hard because we know the money's not necessarily there, but sometimes you can't count for injuries, but you've got to acclimatise to a point where you've got a player who is a left-sided player who could have arguably played. We don't know Whiting's fitness. Like I say, could be fit for Saturday, which might be the reason that Callaghan's just gone, I need to play games at his age, which is fair enough. But from the outside looking in, I can imagine it looks a little bit odd.
Yeah, well, this is kind of what I was getting to, because in a situation where, let's be honest, at times you're beyond square pegs in round holes. It's octagons in rectangle holes and all sorts of different shape combinations. The point is, it's not what we want to see. And to lose a left back to injury on Tuesday night, only for Callaghan to then move on the Wednesday. Look, I appreciate if he's got the opportunity to get more football, but surely there was about to become a possibility of getting more football at Avenue. And now he's leaving a squad that was already stretched beyond belief, even more stretched.
Yeah, and I think maybe the decision may have been accelerated a bit because Lewis Hay came in at Blythe again as an emergency left back in Whiting's case. Lewis Hay is not a left back.
He's not a left back. He's a centre mid or left mid.
Probably more of a left mid, isn't he? Really, yeah. And even a striker to that extent.
Yeah, I remember him playing centre mid quite a bit for Guiseley when he kind of first broke through. But you're right. He's a left back. He is not. Yeah,
and he was brilliant. He was our best player. To be fair, he was exceptional. And then he played centre mid against Blythe in the replay. For me, I'm not too sure that's his position. I think he's better out wide left. I think he's got a lot of talent, really good footwork, good technique. I think that's his position. So maybe that may have accelerated Callaghan's departure to Brighouse. But yeah, we're looking potentially for Saturday, or even before Saturday at this moment in time. If we're taking what's happened Tuesday, you've got Whiting out, you've got O'Malley out, you've got Spencer out. Richmond came in, he was unbelievable. Even though he's not played any pre-season, he was immense. He changed the game. He added a bit of intensity for us, experience, press, got in the faces, did exactly what you need a Northern Premier League player to do, is to get stuck in and kind of just rally the troops a little bit. But can he do that on Saturday after playing Tuesday after not playing for 4 or 5 months? That's a question mark. We're stretched, and confidence is low. Let's be honest, confidence is very low because we're in the bottom 5 or 6. And said this, the table doesn't lie. It really doesn't at this stage of the season. We've played 9 games, and we are where we are because that's where we should be. We've probably put 1 game together, Ilkeston at home, which has been decent. The rest of it's been in, very short spells. But yeah, something somewhere has got to change because we've been on this podcast in this guys and the rest of them as well, rest of the gang, where we are now in a position where we are worse off than we have been in the past how many years since Garrett's taken over on the pitch, because we got promoted when we were previous ownership, and then obviously it changed into what it is now. But we are now in a situation where we are not in the National League North where we were before, and we are now in the bottom 6 of the Northern Premier League. And over the past 5 years, from being arguably a handball away from a playoff final at Brackley to just squeezing in on the last day in the playoffs before some players left, and we knew that game at Spennymoor in the playoffs, we weren't going to win. We weren't good enough. We didn't have the players available because of the situation that happened. We got saved by COVID, and then we go down. And now we're in the bottom 6. So for me, that's facts. We are not as good as what we were 5 years ago. We're absolutely nowhere near it. And for me, we've seen different statements, different press releases, all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, as a fan, you go there and hoping your team is going to win on a Saturday afternoon at 3:00 and be competitive. We got told at the beginning of the season, the priority, well, not the priority, but, there was a big, heavy focus on the first team. We're 16th.
Yet to see it.
Premier League. I'm yet to see it. And for me, something has got to change. Something has got to change for that club to get back to where it needs or should be. Listen, we're not a big club. We're a little club in a grand scheme of things. We're nowhere near as big as likes of Halifax and, even Farsley to that extent. Not saying that. But where we are at the moment and what is happening, if I were in a business and I'd been on decline for 5 years, I probably still wouldn't be in it. Something's got to give, and results at the end of the day for a lot of people is on a Saturday afternoon. And there's obviously comments on forums and this, that, and the other, and I get it. But for me, we're speaking this quite emotively. Football, yes, it is quite a commercial business now, absolutely no doubt about it. But I've said this right at the beginning: we need to thrive and not survive. And in a moment, emotively, people, let's put a people perspective on this in a moment. People are now saying, and this is absolute fact as well, who've said to me, who've been following the Avenue for years and years and years, longer than what I ever seen is in the glory days of the old days, that they're seriously thinking of not going to games at the moment because of the way everything is at the moment. Tell me in the moment how that is acceptable. I don't get it. I don't get it when the absolute hardcore supporters are now saying, might not go to Stafford.
Yeah.
Regardless of the distance, in years gone by, people would have gone to Gloucester, Hereford, Blythe. They'd have gone, we went to Bishop Stortford. Stafford isn't that far away.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not, is it?
And when people are saying it, and I'll be honest and I'll be open and honest and I'll say this, and people may have a go at me and may message me and whatever they need to do, won't be going to the Nantwich game at FA Trophy.
So the Nantwich game in the Trophy it's a home game, isn't it? But it is not including season tickets because it's a cup game.
Absolutely. And I'll put this absolutely out there. I will not be going. It might be very minor in the grand scheme of things, but something somewhere has got to change. And I'm only doing it because I'm not happy with the way things are. We need to see change, improvement. And I know we've spoken about Scunthorpe, and sometimes, listen, in situations, I'm not talking about Scunthorpe here, sometimes the grass isn't always greener. But at the moment, what is happening at the moment isn't working. It isn't working on the pitch. And I can't see the argument to say it is. I just can't see it at the moment.
Well, it's fundamentally not, because it's like you said, to go from being in a position where you were so close to the playoffs to get into the National League itself, and to fast forward to where we are now, and to where Avenue are now, it's not an improvement. And I mean, ultimately, I appreciate that during the tenure of Gareth Roberts, a lot has been made about the community aspects of the club and developing, the ground and things like that. But realistically, has anything else off the pitch actually been enough to kind of make what's happened on the pitch even remotely a tiny bit, acceptable, understandable? Acceptable is not the word, but you know what I mean? Is there anything positive really to show for this 5 years whilst the first team and the league situation has been in decline?
In my opinion, probably not.
No.
And the reason why I'm saying it is because, I might be very headstrong in the first team, but that's my football club. I go to watch my football club on a Saturday afternoon at 3:00 to win a game. I understand the business. I've been there. I've volunteered in the past at the club. I am not disputing it. And I know the facts of what's come out, the numbers that I get thrown about. But at the end of the day, at the moment, where we are is simply not good enough. And I don't care what size of club where we are and what budget it might be. We're not getting the best of what we've got at the moment. That's just where we are at the moment. I think that's what it hit home a little bit more on Tuesday, where the effort's there from the players. Bauer and Bosch have absolutely not lost the dressing room. Not one bit have I lost it. Everybody's fighting for each other. The effort is absolutely there. And I remember a few years ago when in a roundabout similar situation where we were miles away from being good enough in National League North, and we were losing, but the effort was there. At the moment, I say at the moment, where we are now, further down the line, is we're a division lower, and we're lower in a division that we're in now.
Yeah.
So, this is where I'm probably, and people might think I'm crazy and have a go at me, and that's fine. But somehow I'll even say this, right? And I won't name names because it's unfair. But some people have actually said on Saturday at Workington and on Tuesday have said to me, let's potentially think about, or would it be worth us even going and saying, let's create an FC Park Avenue of Bradford? To the point where they just want to feel connected with a club again. And that's the biggest thing for me when I feel really disillusioned. I remember when we were volunteering and doing it, everybody had a role. They all felt part of a club, whether it was from a ball boy to a steward, to helping with the media, to helping with hospitality, to stewarding, to directing cars into a car park. At the moment, that kind of club ethos for me, I don't see at the moment. And that really hurts because we know when we're speaking about non-league clubs and what we do is that's why we love. That's why we love it, don't we? Absolutely. That's why we love it, because you feel part of the club. At the moment, I don't feel it. I've never felt as more disillusioned with a club that I support and love in the past 10 years. Fact. That's my opinion. So, and I think this is where, even some people to the point thinking, could we even potentially go to a different, let's start at the bottom, let's start again, which, I mean, is extreme.
Yeah.
But with that disillusioned and just completely disengaged with what's happening at the moment with the club of the way it is, that those words are even coming out of people's mouths, which is just where we are. And I think, listen, the players are putting everything in. Maybe we can always say some players are not as good as others, and that's just a fact of life. We know that's the case. And some are at this level, some are not. Some have moved up, some have moved down. I'll be honest, I'd say 2 players who are with us, who, and I'll call them out, Lucas Dunson and Will Longbottom, are far better than this level. They're far better than us at the moment. We've performed miracles to keep them too. And I'd say, with the greatest respect to them, they'd walk in any National League North team, and a push maybe even kind of bottom end of a National League for that good. If you're a player in that situation, what are you sticking around for?
Are either of them a striker?
Well, you're asking. Will Longbottom does play up front. He does play up front.
Right,
he's more of a left-sided, but he's left-sided forward, so he could do a job. And Lucas is either one of the best right-backs in this division. Got moved to left-back on Tuesday, scores a brilliant goal for us. For me, it's that people element is where people feel disengaged with the club at the moment, and that is just not good enough. And like I say, whether it's big, small in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to find something else to do on that trophy game against Nantwich because something somewhere needs to change. And if that's that's the way I feel at the moment, might just create a little bit of notice for me. Just as some change is needed, because we can't keep going on like we have done in the past 5 years. Because if we are, we're going to be relegated, and we might be relegated again. Which, I mean, with the great respect to teams below us, maybe that's where we are in terms of the size of the club. But from where we've been and how close we were to going into the National League, isn't acceptable. So yeah, that's my go.
We've got through it, Dave. We've got through it. But I
don't know what you guys think.
Right now,
where do you guys think?
Right now, I'll be honest. It appears like absolutely spot on. You're right in saying fully that if there was that decline over that amount of time, just it goes to show that things aren't working. I mean, I don't know what your take is, Dave.
It's a sad. It's just another. It's been a bit of a depressing podcast, hasn't it? And I know we said off air that there's not going to be a lot of good news, but I can't. The only thing that I said there was when Lewis was talking about your volunteers, program sellers, stewards, whatever you want to name it, tea lady, people who work behind the bar. I just said it's the heart. It's the heart of the club. As soon as that's taken away, the club literally. I mean, it's cliched. The club doesn't have a heart. It just becomes just a shell of something. And yeah, it sounds really, really sad. I mean, the only thing I could say is hold on to the fact that Mark Bauer and his assistant have still got the heart to be in it. Imagine if you'd come on here and said, well, Mark Bauer's losing his interest as well. It's something to hold on to. I mean, again, it's a double-edged sword with the FA Trophy because you want to support them so they do well, so they get through the next round. There's prize money, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, if that club gets through, the finances will go to the people that are higher up in that club.
Yeah,
will they use the team? Who knows?
I could be well off the mark, and I'm absolutely for people to criticise me, and that's fine. It's my decision. I'm not expecting anybody else to follow me. But I know for a fact some people have said, even at the same time as me, they were thinking of potentially not even going to the trophy game as well. So it's not just one person. And I think when a club doesn't get its absolute hardcore support, something gets noticed and people start going, oh, hang on a minute, why is so-and-so not here? Why are they not here? What's the situation here? And I think as well, even to the point, Dave, I mean, love Mark and Danny, absolutely do. And we have really good chats, honest chats after a game. We don't always agree with each other, on selection tactics. Listen, they know far more than me. They're qualified better than me. I can't really tell them how to do my job. I can give my opinion. But I also think for some people, I don't know. We don't know what. Listen, the grass might not be greener. It might be greener. It's all ifs and buts. We don't know, do we? But at the moment, whatever's happening at the moment, we're failing on the pitch. We're just not good enough. We can't compete with those that we should be competing against, and that's where I'm getting really frustrated because at the moment we're in for another season of struggle when we were hoping to be pushing that top end. And I don't think, if I'm being honest, looking at where we are and the games that we've played, that we are strong enough to even get top mid-table pushing for the playoffs. I really don't believe it. And Tuesday for me was a perfect example. We've had 2 games in almost 20 minutes on Tuesday. We've played against teams with 10 men and we haven't won.
Yeah.
So, it's we need to, for us to do anything, something needs to change because it can't carry on the way it's going.
Just want to say a couple of quick hellos. I'm just going to cheer things up slightly with hellos to Jamie Woodson and to Lucas Rodriguez, who've got in touch with comments on YouTube just to say hello. I mean, Jamie said, how's things? And he's coming at the middle of Lewis's rather angsty rant. I'm going to come back to it, though. But I mean, I appreciate we are overrunning now initially on what we wanted to do. However,
we want it to be done by 8.
However, you say about obviously not attending the Nantwich game and hope that, if there are others that do, fair enough, that's their prerogative. But how do I word this nicely? How well noticed will it be in the hierarchy of the club? Because obviously Gareth is obviously over in the States.
Yep.
The director of football is also abroad.
Yep.
Who's there to notice it? The one thing I wanted to bring into the conversation as well, actually, is MP or former MP, I think Jerry Sutcliffe, has joined the board. Will he be there to notice it?
I'm shrugging my shoulders. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really fair question, and I know for a fact it's what's been spoken about between me. And listen, I've not coordinated anything. I have absolutely not, because this is up to me. This is my decision. I'm not telling anybody not to go. This is purely my decision whether to go or not to that Nantwich game. But that is the thing. Listen, for the past 5 years, this has been happening on the decline on the pitch without really much noise, apart from forums, apart from being at games, etc., where people have said stuff. There's not been any banners. There's not been any loud protests. There's not been people going on the pitch and protesting. There's been no silent protest, sit down. There's been nothing of that, because you trust in the custodians of the club to hopefully progress things and improve things, so we are becoming a better product on the pitch. And the reason why I'm deciding not to go is because, one, it doesn't affect the team, because I don't want the team to be affected, because I still want my team to win. 100% I want my team to get to do what Dave's lot did last year. I want us to get to Wembley. But the only way I feel that I can have half decent say in it at the moment is to not attend that game by giving my money over. Because, and people might people might comment at me, but I know for myself as a fan and supporter, and even when I was a volunteer in the past, put a lot of money into that club. Season tickets, merchandise. I've never taken a penny out of that club. And that's not, that's my choice, absolutely my choice. But, that's probably my defence in terms of potentially not going to the Nantwich game. But yeah, I mean, listen, if other people do decide to not go to Nantwich, which is what we were talking about previously as well, who's there to see it? I don't know. The two people at the moment who have a hierarchy. I don't know if they're going to be there at the game or not. I've no idea, because that's not for me to know. But it will be a case of if people don't turn up, what noise comes out of that? Does any noise come out of that? But listen, I think on Saturday going down to Stafford, I can't fill a car going down to Stafford. I can't even fill a car. So there's people who we've asked.
That's a sad reality.
People have been asking to say, you want a lift? No, I don't want to go. No, I'll do something else. I can't fill 4 seats in my car. And so that's where we are, and like I say, there's people who are far more experienced than me, probably love Avenue even more so than me, who have, even questioned whether we're going to go to Stafford. So listen, let's see what happens. And it's done out of pure love for the club, because we all love it. We all want success for the club. We all want the club to progress and do well. There's no doubt about off the field. The academy is looking strong. The community work's been excellent. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The frustration at the moment is the first team, because that is the football club. The football club is based around the first team. And
final thing on Abbey,
it's declined. Anyway, yeah.
Final thing on Abbey, I want to touch on the Jerry Sutcliffe thing, because it's in terms of name locally, of course, he was the MP for Bradford South. He was the minister going back, best part of 20 years ago. He was the Minister for Sport and Tourism in this country. Come on, is there any positives in this that we're taking? I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know what he's been doing of late, but is there any positives that we can see in this? Potentially as, the more local man that can be on the board and may hopefully be at games. And also may have new ideas and fresh impetus of going forward.
We'll see, won't we?
I appreciate everything is very much a time will tell, but
it is a time will tell. But at the moment, we haven't really got time to play with, because we've already had 5 years of decline on the pitch. For me, for somebody like Sutcliffe to come in at that level, they need to be speaking to businesses. They need to be going around speaking to people. They need to be looking for that extra investment. He's got that name about himself. He's got the experience of being in that sector. He should have the contacts from the local area. I'd expect, being part of the board and being local, he should be there at every game and be approachable by all fans. I'd expect him to represent the club in the way that the club needs, because on some occasions we don't even have board representation. We have no people in the directors' lounge, which I know sounds quite a snobby thing to say, but as a club, you need to have representation.
You'll be hard pushed to find many clubs that don't even have directors that travel to the away games.
Yeah. For me, he's been announced on the board, and I know he's part of the Horsefall Trust as well, I believe. It needs defining of what his role and responsibilities on that board is to be. Is it to be to go and seek investment, and I will go, and be representing Avenue, on a match day, or is he that board representative of that link between the supporters and the board, and takes some suggestions on board, and is almost that filter between the supporters and the board and the owner? I don't know, but it needs some definition. We can't just say he's joined the board. For what? For what are we going? What benefit are we going to see? Benefit for me is helping Gareth out, because it's clear, and I've never been disputing the money's put in, by the way, I'll say this, and I've said this before, never dispute the amount of money that's been put in to help the club survive, no doubt about it. But my argument is, and always will be, it's to thrive as a club. Gareth needs that extra support to make the club do that. And so that's why, speculation is rife of what might happen. And so, like Mr. Sutcliffe coming on the board, that, like I say, needs to be called out of what his roles and what he's going to be accountable for as a member on the board. He's got experience as well in passing the boardroom at Bradford Bulls down the road as well. So let's just see what happens. But I think there's a lot of work that can be done to make the club better, a more attractive asset proposition for people to invest in, because it is, and that's not with my Avenue tinted glasses on. One, it's got a bit of history, it's got my name about itself. The amazing work that's been done in the academy and the community has got a lot to sell about itself now. It can be sold. Dave made a fair point. You've got Mark Bauer, well known across the region. Danny Boschel, former EFL, player as well. You have got things tangible to hook onto to sell the club. It needs to be done before it gets any worse.
Well, there we go. That rounds up Park Out. And you're right. You're absolutely right. I think what you're saying, it is just all very much now. Time will tell, both on the pitch and off it. I'm aware that we were kind of, as they were overrunning, so we'll kind of get through the rest of the things we wanted to touch on in more detail. We need to talk about Guiseley, because, again, the last time that we were on, Paul Phillips was in charge there. He has since left. Liam Tong has been given the caretaker reins. He's had 2 games so far. Lost his first game that was there on Saturday at home to Ashton United. By all accounts, a much improved performance from what I've previously seen, but still managed to be pretty mediocre at best. Obviously, they came bloody close to getting a great win at Morpeth on Tuesday night, but for, I think it was a 94th minute equaliser. So there's signs there. Now, in Liam Tong, this is going to be one of the unusual scenarios, I guess. In most cases, caretaker manager comes in and has the chance of getting the job. Not going to be the case in Liam Tong's case, because, well, he's only 26 years old. He's still a player, but he's a leader in the dressing room, hence being given this role. But obviously, the jury's still out on where Guiseley will go from that. Obviously, where the recruitment is. The word is they've had numerous applicants, but as it stands, still no permanent appointment. I mean, we were talking when Phillips was first announced as leaving Lewis, and Russ Wilcox was one of the names that we talked about privately. Yeah. Obviously, he's gone to another MPL side in Gainsborough Trinity.
They've got next in the league.
Yeah. So who else? Where could they look? Very briefly, of course. This is something we'll touch on more probably next week's show, or possibly even about the new manager being in place by then. But who knows?
I mean, for me, the question is not dissimilar to Avenue. Is what are the plans for Guiseley? What the Guiseley want to get from their football club to succeed at this level at the moment? Listen, there's a lot of good people at Guiseley. Some really good people, some really good fans who clearly want the best of the club. And for me, I think this is where, again, there needs to be some transparency, because we talked about this, haven't we? The managers have gone through in the past few years is uncommon for Guiseley from previous occasions. Since likes of Kittrick and Bauer being there. Who've had, I'll miss somebody out, no doubt. But they've had Ellis, they've had Big Knot, they've had Cox, they've had Lockwood, they've had Phillips. I've probably missed somebody out.
To be fair, I think the only one you're missing there will probably be a very short interim spell from February till the end of the season for Sean St. Ledger.
True. Yeah, St. Ledger. Yeah. So, and this is where. Listen, football is a relatively short-term game, isn't it? Even though there's great expectations and aspirations that, we want to become this, as long-term we need this. And I get there's a bit of a strategy, but end of the day, football is about winning games and doing the best you possibly can to get results on the pitch to be as good as you can be. Simple as that. At the moment, for Guiseley, under Phillips, they've got a very distinct identity, very distinct style of play, which has worked for Phillips in the past at various other clubs. He's overhauled that squad pretty much during pre-season to the players he wants. Now he's gone.
Yeah.
And this is where...
It's fair to say the style was different on Saturday.
Very different.
To what has gone before, though, even from Phillips to Liam Tong.
Right.
There was a definite change in style, shall we say.
And I think
a lot less yellow cards.
Well, it's really hurt him, hasn't it? Discipline has really hurt him. Injuries has obviously hurt him as well. But for me, I could be wrong, because I often am. But for me, I'd have kept Phillips. I think he'd have got it right at some point. They seem to be the odd. I watched some of the games and the highlights from Guiseley. They weren't that far off for me. They really weren't that far off from picking up some really good results. I can appreciate probably why the decision was taken to part ways. But
yeah,
for me,
I think when you look at the picture of a last season as well, I think was half the issue.
I think that comes
four
into it.
wins in 20, 4 in 21, something around those numbers.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes into it. I think for me, as a manager, you want to get a little bit of time, a bit of extra time with your players. But the interesting thing is now, is where do they go? For me, I think Wilcox would have been perfect. I absolutely think it'd have been a perfect fit for Guiseley. Whether they've approached, I have no idea, but he's obviously gone to Gainsborough, probably closer to home for him as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, being South Yorkshire. For me, the ones that are standing out, you look at Alan Armstrong, who's left Darlington recently. Would he be prepared to, go a little bit further south to manage a part-time team?
Yeah, he's very much a northeasterner, isn't he?
Yeah. And then you're looking around, and then you let's be honest, you're looking across the road at Mark Bauer and Danny Boschel to potentially bring him back, because you know what you're going to get from them too.
There was certainly one or two fans that I spoke to on Saturday that, well, if Bowser were to, for any reason whatsoever, leave Avenue, I think he'd certainly be welcome back amongst the fan base without a doubt, because of what he did the first time around.
Okay, which is interesting to hear, isn't it?
Well, it's one of those. I think from Guys' perspective, the guy's a bit of a legend for us, because he was the man to take us out of the National League North and into the National League. And I think as well that at the time that he left, perhaps was harshly done to at the time. But there aren't you kind of struggle for names off the top of your head. I said to you at the time as well, I was trying to think of the ones that have done well locally. Who's further down the non-league scene in our region that might be worth, giving that opportunity to.
The names that we chatted, didn't we? I mean, this was outside our kind of chat, but, we talked about potentially John Flanagan, who used to be at Curzon. Very good manager. Wonders at Curzon Ashton. Brilliant. Chris Bald at North Ferriby, done a remarkable job. Got a bit of a connection at Guiseley. Dave will know. This is an outside bet, but you look at Vil Powell at Brighouse. Done a decent job recruiting young players, getting them up through the pyramids, doing really well. Again, with quite limited resources. Would it be, Dave probably answered this better than me, to take that step up. And then you've got other potential ex-players like Andy Hallsworth in academies, Kingsley James as well as being around. So the names are there. I don't think at the moment there's one absolute standout candidate. I think you got pros and cons with all them people, as you do with anything, don't you? But Alan Armstrong plays some of the best attacking football you play, quite vulnerable at the back. Bauer and Bosch, very steady pair of hands. Not the most attacking team to watch. They're playing a counter-attack, will soak up a lot of pressure and try and catch people on there. Chris Boulder, relatively new, but done a really good job at Ferriby. Again, with young players, but with dotted of experience like Danny East in there as well. So, listen, it will be really interesting to see where they go. For me, Guiseley need to appoint somebody where they are going to get somebody to come in straight away and make a difference and get the best of what they've got. Because I'd be surprised if they're going to overhaul the squad again. So somebody needs to come in and fit a reasonable style of what Phillips has tried to create, but maybe just be a little bit more friendly on the pitch, not get as many cards, and just mix it up a little bit more.
I mean, you try and look back over those that have gone before. Obviously, since Paul Cox, it was then Marcus Bignott, who had won the National League North, experienced manager, alongside Russ as the recruiter. Obviously, when they left, it was Kitty was there, and to be fair, Kitty is available. It has to be said. I wouldn't be surprised if he's thrown his hat into the ring.
Even as an interim.
Whether or not he'll get the shot, I doubt it. But you never know. And then to go into obviously Danny Ellis, club legend, with Danny Forrest, who had the managerial experience at Silsden lower down the league. Obviously, didn't work out, didn't last as long as anyone hoped or thought it would. And then into Paul Phillips, who has got the almost been there and done it at the Northern Premier level. He's got the experience of managing at the level and getting sides to the playoffs, but not quite getting them over the line. It is really like, what the hell do you try next? I mean, the one you mentioned earlier is somebody perhaps that has got the link to the club, that has experience of perhaps youth coaching outside, an EFL club. And Andy Holdsworth's the obvious one. It might just be a bit of a hard sell now to tempt him away from Championship Sheffield Wednesdays, where he's the under-21s manager there, to drop to the Northern Premier League. It's one of those. It might have been a bit easier had we still been a National League North club.
Yeah, you just took words out of my mouth, and I think Dave Nodding as well. I think exactly that. Into if you're in a, there's such a difference, just perspective-wise, from the National League North to the Northern Premier League. There's a big difference. Whether that's just historical and people's perceptions of it, but there is, you don't get the same media coverage, you don't get the same kind of caliber of players that you might get on loan as you would do in a National League North. All that comes into it. National Premier League is a well-run league, no disputing it, but it is a very regionalised league compared to the National League North, where you don't get probably as noticed as much. I agree. I don't think that job that he's got at Sheffield Wednesday probably could be part-time between both. I don't think that probably warrants it. So you're probably looking again at the non-league circle, and do you take a punt on somebody who's never been at this level before, or do you go for somebody's experience? But you've already done that with Phillips. So listen, Guiseley, they've got to be very clear on who they want to appoint, and do they appoint somebody based on immediate results, or are they going to potentially go down an avenue of, this is the way we want to play, we're fitting a manager to fit in with that style and kind of play the guys the way that they want to adopt and do. I mean, for me, I think the key player in this is Dave Curry, the academy boss at Guiseley. I mean, he's worked absolute wonders at that academy. He's phenomenal. He's really well recognised. The Guiseley Academy is so successful in what it does. So for me, that pathway between the academy and the first team, that's got to be connected, because the Guiseley Academy is producing some unbelievable talent. We're talking about Avenue doing reasonably well in the past 2-3 years. Guiseley are on a different planet. They're on a different planet at the moment to some of our academy teams around us. So there's got to be that connection between the club, the hierarchy, and the academy to just get that right. And I think with that, you might get a decent manager. But again, on the flip side, what we're speaking about, they're quite trigger happy at bringing managers in, getting rid, getting in, going out again. So from a manager perspective, do you take that risk at that level, like you said?
And of course, it will be somebody that will be working with Russ O'Neill, who obviously is there as director of football.
Or does that change as well? This is one of the questions that they've had to come out with, and I think it's a big decision for me, because they've gone, like you said earlier, mate. I think they've gone few different managers with different styles and never really get them right. And now they need to kind of nail down the mast on one and saying, right, this is what we're doing. We're backing this person for the next 2 years, and we're going to give him that time to do what they need to do. But history at the moment recently says that won't be the case. But who knows?
Again, time will tell. I'm sure we will certainly discuss it in great detail when guys do make an appointment. Finally, we'll turn attention to the sides in the Northern Prem East. Obviously, Dave, your affiliation with Brighouse, so we'll start with them. How are things going down at Brighouse?
Things are going okay, but it mirrors a little bit like what Lewis has been saying about injuries. I think Brighouse can just about field half a side of injured players, and that were apparent on Monday night in their 2-0 home defeat against Dunstan. I mean, every one of Dunstan's players was just was better than Brighouse's. You know, their opposite numbers. Brighouse were totally outplayed, outsmarted, out at everything. Dunstan were very good down the right side, and Vil Powell has since the start of the season been very keen to remind people that it's something like 3 or 4 of the players that play for Brighouse this year have only ever played. Have experience at that level. The rest of them are either signed from below or are like youth teamers. Like I wouldn't even know what the average age of the Brighouse team is. It must be in the early 20s. They brought Michael Roxburgh back, a goalkeeper who they had on loan from Huddersfield the year before. He's now on loan from Spennymoor Town. Few sort of voices that, you know, a few people I spoke to pre-game saying sort of what's Harry Garman done wrong, the goalkeeper who's actually contracted to Brighouse. Vil Powell addressed that in his interview, pretty much said nothing. Harry knew the deal when Michael were coming in, for instance. Luckily, Brighouse have signed a left-back from Park Avenue because Brandon Webster, who was playing that position Tuesday, gave the signal to the bench after an hour and limped off. So I don't know what his injury update is, but luckily they've signed somebody in that position. In terms of a good story, a good news story, Brighouse are in the FA Trophy, you know, draw, same as Park Avenue. They travel to Ashton, who were 5th, 6th in the MPL, certainly in the top half, you know. They go away to Ashton. They've won a couple of rounds to get there, which is very unlike Brighouse. They tend to bow out at the first round of the FA Cup and FA Trophy. Certainly since I've been involved, and I think up to this year, they had a record of something like 10 years in a row. They've gone out of the first round of the FA Cup every year. I mean, they were beaten by Albion Sports. Again, Vil Powell said in his interviews pre and post game, we knew that they'd bring goals, and, you know, Albion Sports beat them 4-2. Robbie Fox scored a hat-trick. But yeah, totally outplayed on Monday, and, you know, Dunstan were good value for their win. They're in the top 5. And again, Vil always says it, any teams from the northeast, I mean, obviously Morpeth are now MPL, Marsk are, any that come from that area, they're always competitive. Shildon, Stockton, Ashington are back, Hebburn, you know.
It says a lot, doesn't it, that Hebburn sit 3rd, Consett sit 4th, and Dunstan UTS are 5th.
It's Newton Aycliffe on Saturday. I mean, they're Teessiders, County Durham area. But again, it does stem from, obviously there's been a lot of restructuring at non-league over the years, but about 25, 30 years ago, there used to be a Northern Premier League that was pretty much exclusively the teams I've named. So they were very competitive with one another, and they always were looking to basically get one over on one another. They just tried to outdo one another. I think a big factor at one time was the FA Vars. They all wanted to win the FA Vars, and I think for the last, again, it's another measuring stick of a decade, but I think for the last decade of FA Vars finals, you've had at least one North East team there. Hebburn have got there, Shildon, I think Stockton might have done. In an FA Vars final without at least one North East team making it. Obviously, they've stepped up to a level now where they don't play in the Vars, but it comes from a background and roots in where a Northern Premier League that would have probably included Blythe Spartans as well was like the competitive non-league league to be in. That's why Blythe Spartans have had so many good FA Cup runs when you go back. I mean, they are famous for being an FA Cup team, and it stems from that same. It's from that same sort of narrative.
Yeah. And I think as well, Dave, when we talk about North East clubs, is that it's probably quite well known that some of them clubs are probably almost a division when they've been in that Northern League, so to speak. They've been a division probably lower than what they should be, just because of the sheer competition and the geographics. We know from going across up to the North East in our various teams that there are some strong teams up there. We talk about West Yorkshire being relatively strong. I know we've been quite down tonight, but the North East is seriously strong. And I think it's stronger than our region.
Yeah. Podcasts up on the northeastern region.
I wouldn't say not Yorkshire as a whole. I wouldn't say, but northeast is definitely stronger than just sort of West Yorkshire. Yeah, I mean North Shields got up to Brighouse's level, and there I think there's some kind of grounding issues, some kind of ground grade issues at that level, and they've had to sort of drop again. But again, North Shields, their clubhouse is just full of, this is what we did in the FA Vars, and they had a very famous FA Cup win against a team in 1982 in West Yorkshire, and the name eludes me. They came to a certain ground and won 3-2, and that makes their programme every week. So, and I've kept it.
Elsewhere in the NPL East, Liversidge we'll touch on now, who a couple of places, Brighouse 13th, Liversidge are 11th currently. Steady away again sort of start for them, Lou.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what we expected. Remember last time we spoke, they brought a few players in just to kind of just mix it up a little bit. And ironically, there on Tuesday night was Remington from Liversidge, which was interesting. I don't know if he was looking and scouting about either ass. But he goes everywhere. He goes everywhere, does him. I've never not seen him at a game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I hope he isn't looking at Avenue players because you haven't got any to spare, to be honest. So.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for rubbing that one in. That's great. That's super. But yeah, I think from Sedge's point of view, steady away. I think it's plain and simple as that. Obviously, you know what? I mean, Dave will know as well. Like I say, the defeat to Brighouse is probably quite significant in August. But you look at it in a moment, they just need to just steady away. I think mid-table, they'll be reasonably happy with the start. It could have been a lot worse. Yes, it could have been better. But I still expect with the quality players that we are playing in that 11 and even on the bench, it's quite strong. They'll be knocking the door on the playoffs. I think for me, the ones that stand out massively in terms of a run and what they've gone on is Ponty. We spoke about them right at the beginning of the season and what they've done. And I think they've gone, was it 5-6 games? I think they've scored about 12. I think they conceded 1 up in second. They have just absolutely just hit an absolute purple patch. And we called, let's be honest, let's take a bit of credit, guys. We called this with the squad that they've got. They look like they're in a moment. And it's great to see because they are pushing the North East clubs. And for Ponty to be second is a great achievement. And you'd expect them to hopefully just keep that run going.
Yeah, I've got 3 clubs on 15 up there. I've just pulled the table up. Belper, who are top, plus 11. Ponty, 15 points, plus 9. And Hebburn, who had a run of, I think they won 5 out of 5. They're third with plus 5. Then it's, Concert Dunstan, North Ferriby, Carlton, Cleethorpes, who made the playoffs last year, Stockton, Grantham, Liversidge, Newton Aycliffe, Brighouse, Stocksbridge and Sheffield, Ashington, Grimsby, Bridlington, and unfortunately Ossett are one of the 2 clubs in the automatic relegation zone with Winterton Rangers.
Yeah, I was going to touch finally on Ossett, and obviously not the start that Grant Black would have necessarily wanted. Well, it just isn't what the start they would have wanted at all over at Ossett.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, they picked up the win on Saturday against Newton Aycliffe, which is a big win. I think the disappointment is, again, in the FA Trophy, they had a really horrible draw against North Ferriby, which they lost, and then FA Cup Mask, they lost 3-0. So they've had a bit of a poor cup return in that respect.
But handed tough ties.
Handed very tough ties, yeah, absolutely tough ties. And I think that's where I think Blackie in that respect will be looking, saying, you know what, we've just got to write that off. I think the blows are, like I say, the 1-0 loss against Stockton, the 4-0 thrashing against Ponty. But those are the kind of games where, the likes of Grant, who's been there, he's done it with Belper. He's got promoted. He knows exactly what to do. But it's a tough task at Ossett because, like I say, they're competing against a lot of other teams in this area, which we've mentioned before. But the pull of Ossett is still relatively strong. It's just I think there was different expectations at the very beginning of what Ossett United might potentially do when they first started, and I think now we've probably just found about the level with Grant Black. They've got somebody who's got a good CV, who's been there and got promoted before, and at the moment it's just not going away. And I said at the beginning of the season, I think if we get anywhere near the playoffs, it's a remarkable season. I think for Grant at the moment and the team will just want to stay clear of it. And unfortunately, Ossett have been another one who've swapped and changed managers as well recently. And they just need to either make a decision whether they stay with Grant or they make a change and they stick with it now. They just need to get a bit of consistency because they've got experience in there. I mentioned before, like Paddy Miller, Harry Coates. They've been there at higher levels, and younger players need that kind of player to count on and lean on. And And sometimes you get a real true sense of what your team is about when you're in moments like this. When your back's up against a wall, people are going, that'd be quite a big loss for us it to go down, and that could really shake things up, actually. It's that mentality of kind of, let's prove people actually what we're all about. And knowing Grant the way he is and the football person he is, I'm confident he can just steer them clear of relegation.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thing, and honestly, we've said we're going to round up. We're about half an hour overrun. Have to touch on a couple of things, really, just to look at the table, really, in the Northern Counties East League Premier. Silsden, who we tipped at the start of the season, to be fair, to do well with the players they brought in, didn't hit the ground running, but my God, have they turned it around. They're currently sitting top of the league on 24 points, 11 games played. Then come Handsworth on second, 10 games played, 22 points. Campion flying as well, 10 games played, 20 points. And then Albion Sports, who I'll be honest, that's one we didn't call at the start of the season, are currently occupying fourth. They've only played 7 games, though, due to superb cup runs. And as it stands, they're on 19 points. So they are 4 games behind Silsden, who are top, only 5 points behind.
It's a great story. They've adapted to a new playing surface really well. The player that I actually called out that might do really well in Gerald Parchment's gone to Weckelshill. I know he played there last night against Campion. Robbie Fox is absolutely on fire, just banging goals in for fun. Along with
there we go, Dave. There's your striker situation sorted. Robbie Fox.
Yeah, I mentioned Robbie Fox.
You did.
The 4-2 win they had at Brighouse, and for 70 minutes that game was 4-0. Brighouse hit 2 goals in like 72nd and the 74th, but make no mistake, they were 4-0 up, and they were a team below playing a team obviously away. It was at the Heffernan Utilities Stadium, which is Brighouse's ground. And yeah, but again, Vill, I can only really just say what I said before. Vill knew they were going to bring goals. He obviously scouted them. He knew what was going to happen, and they still totally outclassed the team that was above them, one league above them.
He's a proper poacher, is Robbie Fox. Having seen him over the years, he's a poacher, and he works his absolute socks off up front. He is quite without using the cliche, he's a bit of an old school number 9 that you're going to get. You don't like playing against him. He's a bit, he can be a bit nasty in terms of you'll be at your ankles. He'll do what you need to do. But now he's just hitting a real good patch of form at the moment. And I think with that, the kind of style that they're playing, and I don't think it's any coincidence as well. The 2 lads used to be at Hammers in the management there, Craig Ogie as well. So I think they made a massive difference. When you've got some real experienced non-league managers and coaches on the dugout, really does help you. Let's be honest, Chris, it does surprise us because we didn't expect him to be that high. I expect him to probably finish mid-table. They still might do, but they've got these games in hand, albeit you'd much rather have the points on the board, but they've got games in hand, and they only went to Hyde in the FA Cup and only narrowly lost as well, so they pushed Hyde all the way. I think Albion are going to be the dark horse at the moment. It doesn't surprise me Campion is still very, very about. Do I think we'll go up? I think we probably need maybe 1 or 2 players just to settle it in getting over that line like we did last year. But we've mentioned this, it is about Silsden. And now they're hitting that form, they've got a bit of consistency, they've rocketed to the top of that league. With the players they've got, they should absolutely be up there. Come the end of the season, they still should be absolutely up there. It's making sure that the players and the managers all stick together and not get too complacent. Because you've got the likes of Campion and Albion and Handsworth just knocking on the door ready to pounce. And if they do go on a bit of a run where they don't win games, they could easily be overtaken after a bit of an indifferent start to the season. Yeah,
just looking at the top goal scorers across the NCL Premier, Marcus Day, top 40 for Campion, so 14 goals in the league. Robbie Fox is second, 14 goals, 9 in the league and 5 in the cup. And then down in 5th at the moment is KL Price, who, unsurprisingly, is a man that has started to find the back of the net. Just touching on the other sides very quickly in the table, a couple of our sides in mid-table in Penistone that are 10th, Emily 11th, Emily 12th, Goffer 13th, Golka 14th, Eccleshill 16th, nobody right at the bottom end. And then in the league below, Nostell still going well, currently sitting second as things stand. Wakefield, who had a good turn of form themselves, actually, to move themselves away from mid-table and up towards the top end of the league. You're currently sitting 4th. Glasshoughton currently not doing too well, down in 17th, but certainly better than Yorkshire Amateur, who, again, that said, going back to when we were last on, have had a bit of a turnaround because they go from bottom of the league up to 19th. So certainly
big thumbs up for them, yeah, really good to see.
Improving, over there. And then finally on the west side, Barlick in the Northwest Prem, Barnoldswick Town currently 7th, and the sides in the First Division North, there are a few of us here. Route 1 Rovers, again, still going well, currently sitting 4th. Ilkley Town in 5th. Steeton just drops off the pace a little bit, but nicely in mid-table, currently sitting 10th. That covers, apart from Shelley as well, who, again, themselves hadn't started too well, but are now outside of that relegation place, down in 16th, 4 points adrift over to Ashton. It's still, we've always said when you get to this point, between 10 and 14 games in, whichever league you're at, you start to see where you're going to be there or thereabouts, don't you?
Yeah, and listen, I think it's now to the point where teams have got enough scouting details on each other. They know probably the patterns of play. They know what it's going to be. There's no surprises anymore, which is why I go back to even, we're talking about Halifax and Farsley. People know what they're all about now. You know what Dave's identified. Halifax need a striker because that's been quite apparent in the past few games.
Yeah.
Farsley just need to keep picking up points and just be steady rather than, sometimes getting blown out of the water, but are doing reasonably well. There's now we're at a stage where almost a third way through the season. There's no surprises. The tables don't lie. The form is what it is. Go back to the NCL top scorers, all 3 of them, with a great respect to that division, a division or 2 higher than what that league is. There's no surprises. Them top 3 include Marcus Day, Robbie Fox, and Kyle Price. We knew that from the beginning of the season. We predicted it. It's coming out in form at the moment. So, listen, I think over the next, I think managers will be now saying, you know what, let's look at what we've done. Let's reflect on what we've done in this past 8 weeks or so. We've got another batch of games now up until Christmas. Let's see how many points. We'll set a target for each other now, saying that we want so many points out of so many games before we hit another busy period. And I think this is where it's a real big test for teams now, because just before this festive period is a real indicator of actually how good are you. You've got through that first bit. Let's see what you're all about now.
It's slightly scary that you just used the words before the festive period when we're at late September. But
Sorry.
There we go. Let's end on that, I think. After a bit of an epic hour and 37 we've been here, lads. I appreciate Lewis and Dave, your time this evening for joining us here to our little non-league show. We will try me back next week. If you are watching on catch-up between now and Saturdays, you'll have seen the fixtures for the Northern Counties and Northwest Counties leagues have been going along the bottom. So if you can get yourself out to some football, if you're Leeds fan or Bradford fan, not going to the game at the weekend, there are certainly plenty of non-league options, as always, across our region. Thanks, though, Lewis and Dave, for joining us tonight. Been a pleasure, as always.
Thanks, Chris. All the best, mate.
No worries. And we'll be back next week with our non-league roundup.